Welcome to the Infidel Podcast of the Damned, the weekly companion show of the Infidel News. Join us as we discuss this week's religious accounts from an atheist perspective. From Timbuktu to Toledo, from Kathmandu to Canada, from Bangalore to Bangladesh. We deplore, you deride. And here are your hosts, Dave and Nicole.
Hello, and welcome to show number 8 of the Infidel Podcast of the Damned. I'm your host, J. David Core, atheist, author, and ancillary alarmist. And with me is my co-host, Nicole Samard. Hello, Nicole.
Hello, Dave. And I couldn't get a black cat for Halloween, so you'll have to make do with a tabby.
Oh, tabby. Okay. Also joining us today is one of our anchors, the Mudbrooker. Hi, Mudbrooker.
Howdy.
Today is Wednesday, October 29th, 2014, and we're going to be discussing the upcoming episodes of the Infidel News, which will run beginning Monday, November 3rd, 2014. And I thought that was a Bengal cat. It looked like, but apparently it's just a cheap old cat tabby.
I can't afford a Bengal cat. No, a tabby, and not only that, though, he's not that cheap because if you can, I don't know if you can see it, but he had a problem with his right eye when we got him, and he had to be operated. So he's got a bit of the white skin on, the white part of the eye, on top of the actual lens itself, because he had an infection that couldn't be cured. So he cost me quite a bit, probably just as much as a Bengal cat.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I want to let our audience know about something that you really don't need to know about, but I thought I'd just let you know about this anyway. This being our Halloween broadcast, we were going to have a special guest today, but there were some technical problems. So just like last week we had a special guest, we were going to have a special guest this week who was a practicing Wiccan, and we were going to discuss Wicca and Samhain, which is the pagan celebration that Halloween was co-opted off of. But that didn't happen because of technical difficulties, but hopefully we'll have her on on another show in the future. So anyway, do you want to go ahead and just get into the first stories, or do you want to? Is there anything anybody else has to talk about?
Yeah, let's dive into the stories.
Okay.
Let's have fun.
Yeah.
The developer of a Noah's Ark-based theme park in Kentucky has said he will fight for his religious rights after state officials warned he could lose up to $18 million in potential tax credits if they hire only people who believe in the biblical flood. In July, Ark Encounter LLC, part of the Answers in Genesis group, received preliminary approval to collect a rebate from a portion of the sales tax revenues generated at its park. However, because of a job application that was submitted to AIG for a computer design artist position, which was advertised on the AIG's website, which was then forwarded to Kentucky state officials by the group Americans United for the Separation of Church and State, the job application was pretty standard apart from two little requirements: a letter of salvation testimony, a creation belief statement. In other words, you believe in the biblical creation or don't bother applying. Tourism, Arts, and Heritage Cabinet Secretary Bob Stewart said that such a job posting would violate Kentucky's state and federal hiring laws. Ark Encounter, which is a theme park development highlighting the biblical flood, which is expected to open in 2016, is not hiring anyone yet, but its parent company, Answers in Genesis, asks employees to sign these faith statements. It is wondered by this channel why anyone has to be hired for this construction apart from one 700-year-old man and his immediate family to construct this ark, as it is billed as being a genuine replica, and this would add to its authenticity. However, on the Answers in Genesis website, it has said, huge earth-moving machines were delivered to the Ark Encounter site, and the excavation for the life-size Noah's Ark project has begun. Mike Zovath, who is also co-founder of Answers in Genesis, said if tax incentives for the project are withdrawn because AIG does not give written assurances the state now seeks, it would violate the organization's First Amendment and state constitutional rights. Plans for the theme park include a wooden replica of the Ark during the $73 million first phase. Then other biblical-themed attractions will be added in phases. The project has been financed through donations and bonds, but Zavath said the state's incentives could help finance those future phases. Communications Director for Kentucky Tourism, Gil Lawson, said that everybody knows laws regarding hiring practices and that the state doesn't need to elaborate them for companies seeking tax incentives, adding, "We expect all of the companies that get tax incentives to obey the law."
Yeah. Now, see, that's Ken Ham. It doesn't say that in the story, but that's Ken Ham. That's the same guy that just had a debate with Bill Nye recently. The same guy that has been in charge of Answers in Genesis, which is a ridiculous, crazy website that's been cited over and over again. The "Were You There" guy. That's the "Were You There" guy, and the fact that he's gotten any state funds to begin with is ridiculous, because what secular purpose does this thing serve? There is no secular purpose. It shouldn't have been given any state funds. But if they're going to give it state funds, he has to treat it as if it's a completely secular thing. So this whole idea of putting any kind of religious questions on his thing, he's just asked. He wants to join Kent Hovind in jail. That's all there is to it. He's just pressing his luck.
Well, he wants to have it both ways. He wants to be able to have a purely religious operation and yet still get the state funding. And it just doesn't work that way.
No.
If it was purely a privately funded operation, there would be no problem with having a religious requirement to work there because it's a religious theme park. Mm-hmm. But he's trying to have his cake and eat it too. And the state just isn't going to be allowed to let that fly.
Well, in China, they've got a Noah's Ark park that was put up by, created by a couple of billionaires, and they also they got in trouble with the law because there was something fishy about what they were planning to do, and they actually got. Some of the people who were living in the area, they managed to get them kicked out of their houses.
Yeah, it was like China's version of eminent domain.
Yeah, so it's all those guys. You can't trust them. They're just trying to do everything their way, and there is never anything, good behind it.
Yeah, yeah. The Creation Museum that he already has in Kentucky is a flop. So why the state thinks that this ark is going to be a big tourist draw is beyond me. If even if it was just built as a tourist attraction, it would not do that well. How many people are going to want to go to see a replica of Noah's Ark? That's pretty boring. It's not like they're going to go to Disneyland and ride rides. What kind of rides are you going to have associated with Noah's Ark? And maybe it's not even a water park, which would make a little sense, but it's just a plain park with water features. I think they're having water features on the site, but it's just like ponds and stuff like that. People aren't going to go to it unless it's for religious reasons or to mock it like they do to the Creation Museum.
Well, it's his Creation Museum, if he wants to call it that way, or if we want to call it that way. How many times are people going to see the same thing again and again? There is absolutely nothing to it.
Right, and it's not like they can even bring in new stuff because the Bible's pretty much been the same book for 6,000 years, according to them. So it's not going to. If at least in Disneyland they can update the Epcot Center. You can't do that with the Bible themes. It's stagnant.
Well, it's just like having a science test in the Christian church. The answer to all the questions is the same every time. God did it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe Ken should take his cue from the Noah's Ark down in Wisconsin Dells. It's a water park. It's just named Noah's Ark. It has absolutely nothing to do with the Bible or religion or anything. It's just that's just the name of the place.
Yeah.
Then he might actually be able to turn a buck doing something like that. But yeah, the religious theme, you're only going to be able to run that for a couple of years before the novelty wears off. Yeah. And it's just going to crash and burn after that.
Right. And if it was accurate, they'd only allow 6 people on at a time, and then afterwards you'd have to screw your daughter.
Oh, how could you say a thing like that?
You're an evil, evil man.
I'm just saying that's accurate. That's biblically accurate.
Oh, come on. There's no such thing as...
As biblical accuracy. I agree.
Yeah, the Bible does not contain anything like that anyway.
No. They don't. His daughters don't get him drunk and then have their way with him in order to repopulate the planet. That doesn't happen.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, but that wasn't Lot. That was Noah. Or that wasn't Noah. That was Lot.
Well, I think it was both. I think it was Lot and Noah, wasn't it? Maybe it was Lot. Maybe I'm confusing.
Noah got drunk and passed out naked in his tent, and
That's right.
Ham came in and saw him naked and told his brothers, and his brothers backed in, walked in backwards and covered him up, and apparently that pissed Noah off to no end, and the whole curse of Ham, and supposedly that's where black people came from, and it was used to justify slavery because they would be the servants of servants for ever and ever.
Right. I thought the mark of Cain was black skin. That's what a Serbian preacher told me one time. But anyway, depends on who you're talking to, I guess. The mark of Cain or the mark of Ham, whichever one of them.
Yeah, you can make pretty much anything fit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so let's go on. Move on to the next story.
Okay.
This is the Jewish year 5775, which is a sabbatical year, when according to the Bible, the land of Israel is supposed to lie fallow. Called a Shemitah year in Hebrew, the sabbatical is intended to allow the poor to reap whatever may still be growing on the land, so that the poor of your people may eat. Exodus 23:11. The start of the sabbatical year prohibitions, which include sowing, planting, pruning, reaping, harvesting, and improving the land, coincided with the start of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, that began this year on September 24th. Today, most Israeli Jews observe Shemitah via a legal loophole endorsed by the chief rabbinate called Heter Mekira. It permits farmers to sell their land temporarily to non-Jews who aren't bound by Shemitah. For most people, this arrangement results in little, if any, inconvenience, but hundreds of thousands of ultra-Orthodox Jews, both in and out of Israel, don't hold by the loophole, making the Shemitah year a challenge, not only for them, but for the many institutions from hospitals to soup kitchens that serve members of the very religious public. Recently, leaders in the Israel Defense Force IDF, one of the largest public institutions in Israel, had to decide whether to purchase fruits and vegetables from Israeli farmers this year, as it has always done, or to obtain the produce from abroad. The majority of the farms that donate food to Laket, Israel's national food bank and the country's largest food rescue network, abide by Heter Mekira. That means it will accept Israeli cultivated crops. Even so, shortages are anticipated. While many Israelis consider Shemitah little more than the imposition of an archaic law by the religious establishment, some have embraced the commandment's emphasis on renewal and social equality. The biblical laws require forgiveness of debts and release of indentured servants.
Okay, now there's a word that wasn't used in the story. It's a Hebrew word, and I don't remember what it is, but there's a Hebrew word for Gentiles that you hire to do work that you're not allowed to do. You know what I'm talking about? Because it's something that they've had for a long time. Like on Saturdays, you can hire a Gentile to turn on your gas stove and turn on your light switches and do things like that for you, because they're not bound by the same rules as you are. So you hire them to do your work on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
But this is something that they've been using. It's like a loophole to get around their own rules forever. It would be like a Catholic having somebody else eat their fish for them or eat their meat for them on Friday. It's like, it's a rule that applies to me, but I don't want to follow it, so I'm going to find a loophole to get around it. It's ridiculous that they've been doing this, and they've been doing it for years, just getting around the rules. There's in the regular law, not in religious law, but in the regular law, there's a thing called the spirit of the law. And if you even if you don't literally break the law, but you violate the spirit of the law, you can be found guilty of doing something wrong. But why does that not apply in religion? You can use the loopholes in religion.
Next thing you're going to try and tell me that they pick and choose what part of the Bible suits them.
No, well, that's a whole different topic.
Well, it's a little easier if you're Jewish because you only have the Old Testament to pick from, so you don't have to worry about trying to work in extra rules out of the New Testament.
Yeah, but there's enough contradictions just within the Old Testament that still becomes problematic. This is another one of those things where some of the rules about like not eating shellfish and stuff like that, and not eating pork, because pork contains trichinosis, and shellfish can make you sick if you get bad shellfish. So there are people who say that a lot of the dietary rules in Judaism were common sense rules that they put a religious aspect on to make people want to follow it. And that whole thing about leaving a field lie fallow is actually good for the farming under old-fashioned farming practices, but it's not anymore, because now you can add nitrogen to the soil artificially, and etc. You don't need to let it lie fallow for a year, and the demands on the ground are so everything's changed. There's you can do farming without using the soil at all now, for a lot of things. So the fact that they're still relying on these old rules, it shows how archaic. So on the one hand, you have these archaic rules that they're still trying to follow, but on the other hand, they're not really following them because they're finding loopholes.
Yeah. Well, there are companies in Israel that specialize in getting around the Sabbath restrictions. They're constantly inventing things. A Sabbath, because you're not allowed to light a fire. Mm-hmm. So they have ovens that'll fire up on their own, automatically start and stop, and it's like the Sabbath elevator. The setting for the Sabbath day, it stops on every floor, so you don't have to push a button. Uh-huh. It's a pretty big business, coming up with ways to get around with the Sabbath and do pretty much everything you would normally do without technically breaking the rules.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, it's a matter of picking and choosing. Yeah. There's always a way to get around the rules.
Yeah, and if there's an ingenuitive way to make money at it, somebody's going to figure that out too.
Yep.
Yeah. I almost said there, and it would have come out completely wrong because it wouldn't have been what I meant, but I almost said there, if there's a way to make money at it, some Jew will figure out a way to do it. But I wasn't meaning that the way that sounds. That would have been a total. I was just meaning, because they are in Israel and it's Jewish, but it would have sounded really bad. So I'm glad I didn't say that until I said it. Okay.
Which you didn't, but you did.
Right. I explained it first.
Well, let's put it this way. They're a very large community over here in Toronto. And in French, we've got an expression. When somebody is taking forever to do anything, we say, what are they waiting for, the Messiah? And one day I was waiting behind somebody's, I was driving in the traffic, and I was waiting behind somebody who was taking forever to turn. And I almost said it, and then all of a sudden I realized, well, there's a good chance he is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, shall we go to the next story?
Yeah, let's go on to the next story.
In July of this year, a clash between Chinese security forces and Uyghur Muslims, a large minority in the western province of Xinjiang, where 40% are Han Chinese, resulted in the deaths of 37 civilians and 59 people. The Chinese are officially classifying as terrorists. On October 13th, a court in Xinjiang sentenced 12 more people to death for their roles in the uprising. The Chinese government is blaming the unrest on a desire among the Uyghur to establish an adjunct to the Islamic State declared by militants in Iraq and Syria. Officials accuse a man killed in July revolt Nulmaiti Sawata of being the mastermind behind the insurrection. Chinese television showed one orange-clad defendant saying he talked about jihad, about establishing an Islamic State. Another Ali Tourison said, "We often thought about carrying out holy war. However, due to restrictions placed on outside media, there is no non-government corroboration as to the veracity of these statements available. Critics suggest that the true motives of the uprising are rooted in China's repressive policies toward the Uyghur population, which includes economic and cultural suppression, as well as increased detentions and increase in death sentences." A statement released the day following the sentence by World Uyghur Congress reads, "The increase in frequency of these trials and sentences signals that the state has stepped up its one-year anti-terror campaign by exhibiting excessive force against its population."
Okay.
Did you guys, either of you guys, see the 3-hour-long Sam Harris Cenk? I forget his last name. The Young Turks show, the 3-hour-long interview with Sam Harris.
Yeah.
You saw
I
that?
didn't watch the whole thing, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay. In that interview, Cenk kept making the point to Sam Harris that a lot of the times the violence that you see from Islamists is the same kind of violence that you see in countries like Ireland when they were under control of the British, and it becomes a part of their the religiously identified groups doing it, and they of course apply their religious identity to what they're doing, but it's actually the situation that they find themselves in that's causing them to do it. And this situation with the Chinese government is pretty much letter perfect for what Cenk was trying to say, because even if they are actually talking about jihad and actually talking about trying to establish the part of ISIS, there's no way that they can actually think that as a group they're large enough to do that without the help of outside forces. So it is them reacting to the fact that they're pretty much suppressed by the Han majority, which actually isn't even a majority in their area. The Hans are a minority in their area.
They're 40%, I believe.
Right. The fact that they're being suppressed is what's causing them to act out. The fact that they have a Muslim identity, of course, they're going to apply that to what they're doing, but it's not necessarily the root cause of it. Not to say that there's not the book, the Quran, doesn't justify what they're doing, because it does, but it just gives them an excuse more than being actual causal, because you have other places in the world where they're treated, they're not treated as minorities as such. For example, in the United States, there are a few Islamists in the United States that are reactionary, but by and large, it's not a thing that we really have to worry about. In Canada, they don't really have to worry about it. In France, they don't really have to worry about ISIS or an Islamic State, a Palestinian type uprising. They do in Israel and they do in China because of the way the government treats the people.
Well, it's funny that we have this topic today, because I was watching a video today, and it came from a representative of the Al-Aqsa mosque, mm-hmm. And he was calling for the representatives of the different, or at least the leaders of the different Muslim nations, to boycott China and to boycott their products because, of what the way the Uyghurs are treated. And but the thing is, China, money talks more than anything else, and there's no way that any country is going to say no to cheap Chinese products. Mm-hmm. Even if their religion, it doesn't work with their religion. So even if Alexa's representatives are calling for a boycott of China, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, though, this is really nothing new. There's been quite a bit of unrest for the past 40 or 50 years at least in that particular region of China. There have been uprisings, and of course, they were pretty ruthlessly quashed by the Chinese government. But before long, you really get into a position where neither side's hands are really clean. So,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
you get some, one group being suppressed, they fight back, which leads to more suppression, which of course pisses them off all the more. So they fight back more, and you end up with a situation like you have between Israel and the Palestinians. I mean,
Right.
both sides are innocent and both sides are completely guilty at the same time.
Right.
And it's gets to be damn near impossible to get out of a situation like that.
Yeah, yeah. It's Hatfields and McCoys. Nobody knows who threw the first punch. Nobody cares who threw the first punch. They're just not going to be. They're not going to. They want to be the one who throws the last punch. So
And it was like that for the longest time in Ireland.
Yeah.
Between the Catholics and the Protestants, and they were just after each other's throat.
Yeah, it's one of those things where when you don't learn from history, you repeat history. Because the China situation is a very, very strong parallel to the Israeli because it's an occupation, and they're putting more and more people. The Hans aren't really so much indigenous to that area as they're becoming. They became they're 40% of the population now, but they weren't always. So that's just and they're just there to give credence to the Chinese occupation.
Well, such is life.
Yeah.
Especially among the religious.
Yeah. Well, it's again, it's another one of those things where if there was no religion, if there were if religion was taken out of it altogether, but there was still race, and there was still just cultural differences, you would still have this kind of thing.
Yes.
So this isn't really all religion's fault in this particular case. It isn't helping. Religion is not helping the situation. It's exacerbating the problem. But the thing about it is, as long as the religion is there, it's always going to be the focal aspect of the problem, and you're never going to be able to get to the roots because you have to dig through the muck. There's too much. The religion is muck.
Good way to describe it.
Your video froze. But and now I'm gone.
Oh my!
We're having some.
You're coming back.
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah, we're having some glitches.
Back in black.
Yeah, speaking of glitches, what's
Nice
this week's
segue.
Yeah, what's this week's Christian glitches?
Okay. We've got a special one here today, and it features Pat Robertson.
Do we have the same power that it took to raise Jesus Christ from the dead? And if so, where is that in the Bible?
Well, he gave his disciples the authority to heal the sick, to raise the dead. I mean, that was part of our power. You see, ladies and gentlemen, God is almighty. He is almighty. And he gives us that power. And Jesus said, you say to the mountain, you speak to the dead person. He called on Lazarus. He said, Lazarus, come forth. And the dead man came up out of the grave. We have the same power. He's given it to us. It's in the Holy Spirit. But we need to be in touch with him. We need to behold him. We need to be submitted to him. And that power is there. We just aren't using it.
Hey, the power is there. They've got the power.
They're just letting people die. Those bastards. Those bastards. They killed Kenny.
Well, they don't want to look like they're showing off.
Yeah.
Humility is important.
Yeah. Well, they have the power to turn bread into flesh and wine into blood, and they have the power to talk to God. So they got all kind of magic powers. It's it's a wonder. It's a wonder.
Actually, they get some of the kids who practice doing that, don't they? Remember the movie, Jesus Camp?
Mm-hmm.
And that woman is trying to teach the kids how to bring people back from the dead.
Yeah,
You haven't seen that?
I haven't. I didn't watch that. When I was a kid at camp, we were able to levitate people. You stand on all the sides and you put your fingers together like this, and you stick it under. And everybody puts their hands over top and says, "Light as a feather, light as a feather," and then they just float.
Yeah. You ought to watch Jesus Camp. It's really something.
I've seen scenes from it, and it just looks awful. I mean, not awful like in badly done, just awful like in. I would be so pissed off the whole time.
Oh, I was pissed off the whole time, and I get pissed off when I find out, that the woman is actually showing up all over the world. She's doing the same thing. Like her camp was shut down over in the U.S., but then it gave her a lot of free advertising, and so now she's opening camps all over all over Asia right now. The Orient.
Yeah. So documentarians are amazing people. The way that they're able to get people to open up their doors and show off the terrible things that they do. There have been documentaries with Nazis showing off, religious had religious people talking about ridiculous things, and they're just like they're proudly saying, they invited Bill Maher in to make fun of him. What were they thinking? But documentaries are amazing that way.
Actually, Ken Ham was not aware that Bill Maher was going to show up for the interview. He was really angry.
Yeah, but when Bill Maher showed up, he could have said, "Never mind."
Yeah.
But he still sat down for the interview.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And there's that famous clip with Richard Dawkins where he walks in unannounced on that woman and starts talking about. You remember the clip I'm talking about? Richard Dawkins did, where he comes in and interviews that Wendy, somebody, blonde woman, and she just says some of the most ridiculous things in the video and in the interview. The interview is like 20 minutes long. He just keeps asking her questions, and she's like saying that, well, there's no transitional fossils, and he said, yeah, the museums are full of them. Just knocks everything she says down. But yeah, he comes walking out of nowhere, and she starts talking to him. There's a camera in her face, and she'll just blah blah blah. I know.
Well, I saw yesterday a video of this guy who's saying, atheists denied that Jesus existed, and that was 2,000 years ago, and yet they are able to tell us that Neanderthals existed, 300 million years ago.
Yeah.
And so how do they know what went on 300 million years ago, but not what happened 2,000 years ago? Atheists, they're not logical.
Yeah.
I was just peeing my pants when I heard that one.
Yeah. All of a sudden, there's a lot of stuff about how there was never a Jesus. That, there's all kinds of things coming out. The books and videos and documentaries and all kind of things coming out with people exploring whether or not there was actually a historical Jesus, which is something that for a couple of thousand years has just been taken as fact that there was a historical Jesus. Now all of a sudden there's a lot of people questioning whether there was a historical Jesus or not, and the evidence against it is really, really strong.
Yeah, but it's just that before everybody took everything for granted, and now they're starting to question. It's just like it's also a consequence of people reading and analyzing the New Testament properly and the Old Testament, as in, it's not just one person who wrote. There is Q, there's and then they came up with all those things, and then they go, "There's something wrong here."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, so Buddy, do you have any idea when you're going to have a video out?
Oh man, I am just busier than hell right now. I'm in the middle of fall cleaning. I'm building a snowblower for my tractor. Still got wood to cut. Probably another couple of weeks before I even begin to surface.
Yeah.
But how long before you have snow out there?
Anytime now. Usually by the end of November, we got a couple inches of snow on the ground, but there's been years we've had in the middle of October that still hung around all winter. We already had a little bit, but it melted right away. That was about 3 weeks ago. Had a little snow shower.
But you don't need a snowblower. You just use your muscles.
Oh, I've managed to bowl my way through the driveway a few times, but a quarter mile of waist-deep snow tends to get a little bit tiring.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Ah.
I think you can do it.
I'm getting soft in my old age.
You haven't got my gray hair.
Yeah. Have you had any snow yet, Nicole?
No, Toronto. Everybody thinks that because Toronto is up north, that from the U.S., that we get a lot of snow, but we get very little. We've got what we call the banana belt.
All right.
And I know it's a funny expression, but it's like, Toronto is against the lake on the north side, and it's like an arc that goes around the city, and anything within that arc, we are getting lake, a lake effect, and we basically have very, very little snow.
Yeah, the lake effect south of the lakes, though, in Cleveland is bad. It causes more snow. I'm in Ohio, but I'm 2 hours south of Cleveland, and the snow belt is about 20 minutes north of me, and you can actually see there's a line where when you cross that line, you pretty much go into snow and come out of snow a lot of the winter. And
yeah, but you're not next to Lake Ontario. It's not the same lake. Yours is it's further north than ours.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been to Toronto. It's north of Buffalo.
Yes, it is.
Buffalo gets a lot of snow.
Yeah, but it doesn't have the same lake effect as we do here.
God just likes you better.
Yes, exactly. Actually, it's because we're not Christians that we get it better.
That's what it is. Yeah. There's too many Christians in Buffalo and Cleveland.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, but so before we sign off, then let me let people know something that might be of interest to you. The True Puka did a video this week, which we'll link in the video and on the blog page in the show notes. That's infidelpodcast.blogspot.com. We'll link the Puka's video there, where he kind of did a little bit of an exploration into the FFAF, which is the Freedom from Atheism Foundation, which is an answer to the Freedom from Religion Foundation, where they were basically misrepresenting support that they have from other organizations. They have a website, and they have a link of like partner sites. But he contacted all those partner sites, and they never heard of him. So it's a pretty good video. So yeah, if you're interested in finding out a little bit about how deceitful some of the anti-atheist groups can be, that's a good video to watch.
And FFAF does not stand for Funeral for a Friend.
No. But it could. Okay. Well, so that's all for today. Please make sure that you subscribe to the Atheism TV channel. There you can watch the Infidel News for the Damned, where our talented team of writers and anchors present these and other stories not normally covered in the media. In the coming week, the Infidel will rerun today's stories and many more fascinating ones, and you'll find Atheism TV at youtube.com/atheismtv. The Infidel Podcast of the Damned is a Nicole SD production. Nicole and I would like to recognize and say thank you to Truth Surge, who did the voiceover used in our intro and gave us permission to use music from his song Lied To in our intro. We also want to thank the Mud Brooker for participating in today's podcast. Thank you, Muddy.
You're welcome.
Nicole's channel is Nicole SD and can be found at youtube.com/NICOLSD. I'm Gamut Man on YouTube, at Gamut Man on Twitter, and my blog and information on my books, including my nonfiction title, Believe It, You Know an Atheist, as well as my mystery novels featuring the atheist detective Lupa Schwartz, can be accessed at tinyurl.com/Lupa Landing. While there, you can sign up to receive my newsletter, and signing up also entitles you to choose one free ebook title from my collection of 99-cent novellas. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, all.